Well, I think he's visiting a number of different places, which I think largely reflects the fact that the British really consider the solutions to the current crises in the Middle East to sort of be regional solutions. But I think really in terms of what he's hoping to achieve, I would say there are sort of three main policy priorities for David Cameron. The first is stopping sort of Iranian-backed Houthi attacks on international shipping in the Red Sea. Of course, the UK joined with the United States in combating Houthi rebels with military strikes, and sort of in doing so, it kind of takes responsibility for that. So, of course, it wants a decent result, and from that. I think secondly, and of course related to that, is the fact that it sort of wants to ensure that Iranian proxies operating in Yemen, in Syria, in Lebanon and elsewhere, really, their activities don't lead to some kind of major direct confrontation between Western powers and Iran, or even with Israel and Iran, for obvious reasons. And I think thirdly, again related to that, is what they're hoping to achieve is that, to try to kind of lay the framework for ensuring that the Israel-Gaza war ultimately leads to some kind of sustainable peace, which the UK considers to be a two-state solution, or at least some steps towards the two-state solution. Now, of course, that sort of puts the UK government at odds with the Netanyahu government, which sort of largely doesn't, agree with the kind of two-state solution which the West or the UK considers. But I think the important principle here is that actually we can't return to the status quo, and something has to be different to ensure that the escalation of violence stops. So I think that's something that at least the UK and Israel can agree on. But I think in terms of other messaging from David Cameron, if you look at the statement the Foreign Office, the UK Foreign Office issued before, they said they essentially called for what they called immediate pauses to the conflict between Israel and Gaza. Now, I think, that partly reflects a sort of adoption by British officials to sort of more critical, or to language used by more critical people in British politics of Israel. But I think, if you actually look at the detail of what he's essentially saying, he's essentially saying that you can only have, that situation, immediate pauses, with some kind of release of Israeli hostages. So I think there's really not a huge shift in terms of policy there. But I think, of course, as I mentioned, David Cameron really is trying to create some kind of regional solution to this that involves many different parties, including the Lebanese, of course, relevant for Hezbollah, but also meeting with the Saudis and others in Oman as well.
And of course, the conflict has very much been imported to British streets in recent weeks, haven't we? We've seen that, haven't we? And most recently, a British MP says that he's quitting politics altogether because he's had his life threatened by Islamic extremists.
That's right. It's Mike Freer, who actually happens to be my local MP, who served for the Conservative Party since 2010 in various government roles as well. Now, Mike was subject to a attack at his constituency office, which resulted in a fire. And I think, that really is the culmination of so many threats that he's faced on this issue. And I think, Mike represents the constituency of Finchdune Golders Green, which is a very Jewish area of London. So I think he's really faced a lot of the scrutiny from a lot of sort of pro-Palestine activists in the UK. But of course, it's a terrible thing for any open liberal democracy for a politician to be intimidated through violence or threats from actually not standing for public office. But of course, there might be other aspects to it as well. Mike is currently polling at third place in his constituency seat. So it might be that there are other aspects to his decision as well. But certainly, one can have such sympathy for anyone in this impossible situation where they feel for their personal safety, they actually have to not stand for office, and it certainly shouldn't be happening in our liberal democracy.
Absolutely. Adam Schwarz, thank you very much. Great to talk to you.